Hello and welcome to This is Just Ross and Chris. And like sometimes, it is not just Ross and Chris because today we have John Forth. John Forth joined Portfolio. We didn't say much, kept it quite quiet, like a soft launch. But since February, Portfolio has been selling, it's February this year, we've been selling properties in England. So that is single properties on the open market and property portfolios. And the man that is helping us with that is again John Forth. And the reason that it's John is because, well, we've actually known John for a couple of years now and had lots of communication with him in the lead up to considering launching into England and how we do it. And John has the same values as Ross and I. I'd say, he's a family guy and he's been working in for landlords for really most of his career. He is the northeast, that's the northeast of England, representative for the NRLA. And I think I'm going to pass on to John now and let him tell you a bit more about his background, and then we can maybe get into a conversation about some new legislation that may or may not be happening, and just get a general vibe about how things are. I'm going to say down south, but of course in England. So over to you, John.
We're we're very much the north. We're very much the north
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's so
in
confusing.
England. In England, anyway. It doesn't sound right here down south.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks very much for that, Chris. And hi everyone. Yeah, like Chris was saying, I joined up with Portfolio in early 2023, and as Chris was saying, we worked together on a couple of projects where we felt that we shared a lot of values in terms of getting tenants in position and trying to actually provide a seamless transition from one landlord to another. And when we decided to launch in England, we thought that, given my position and network, it would be a seamless kind of expansion for the company. As Chris mentioned, I'm the Northeast representative for the National Residential Landlords Association, the NRLA. So we're teamed up with the SAL, the Scottish, or the SLA, isn't it, Chris, in Scotland?
No,
Scottish
um,
Landlords Association.
there's a couple of acronyms there, but carry on. Yes.
Yeah. And so I've been working in property for 25 years. I've been an investor, a developer, and a landlord for 25 years. I also work a lot in supported housing. But I've been helping landlords in the Northeast for the last 5 years within the NRLA. And so I know the challenges that landlords are facing, and especially the challenges in the market today.
You were at an
We
event yesterday, John, weren't you? What sort of things were landlords? You ran an event yesterday, didn't you? And there's lots of
Yeah, I
landlords.
mean, we run numerous events every month, really, and we've got a packed schedule for September and into the autumn as well. But yeah, we're talking to landlords a lot about their issues, and obviously at the moment we've got that perfect storm of rising interest rates, of legislation. Of course, we've got Section 24, which compounds everything, and and obviously we're waiting for some more announcements on EPCs and energy efficiency. So it's a really turbulent time in the marketplace at the moment, and a lot of landlords are feeling that.
One thing that just occurred to me, and it goes along the lines of maybe talking about the differences in the Scottish private rented sector and the English private rented sector, let alone maybe the Welsh. But the one thing that's not in your perfect storm is the inability or otherwise to increase rents.
Yeah, I mean we've still got that, although we're looking down the barrel at the renters reform bill. So there's quite a bit of legislation coming through in England. It's due for its second reading when Parliament resumes in September, and one of the areas covered in that is that we can raise rents once a year. So we need to produce a Section 13 form, and a tenant has to be given notice of the rent increase, but it's limited to once a year, and it can be challenged via an ombudsman. So the rent increase really needs to work for everybody. It needs to work for the landlord with rising costs, but it also needs to be financially feasible for the tenant. Otherwise, we're just getting into a position where it's not a feasible tenancy. And as responsible landlords, of course, we want tenants to remain in situ, but we also have to cover costs. Latest figures are that landlord profits are the lowest they've been in 16 years. It's a tough marketplace, and with interest rate rises and of course Section 24, landlords are being forced to raise costs, to raise the rents.
Yeah. They often say that the northeast of England often tops the polls as some of the best investments in the UK. What is it about the northeast? Because obviously it's an area that you live in and love. And what do you think is the
Yeah,
northeast so attractive to and for investors?
absolutely. It's God's own country, as they say, and yeah, it's a combination of low property prices. There's a well everywhere now. We've got a huge rental demand. I think the latest figures are throughout England. There's 20 viewings per rental property at the moment, so you can see the supply crisis there. So rents are high, and because of market conditions, not because of greedy landlords. It's market conditions are forcing these rents up. Property values are fairly low, especially in comparison with the rest of the country, but more so as we're having this turbulent time with interest rates rising, and there's a real lack of confidence in the marketplace. So values are coming down. For some investors, that is the perfect storm for them. So they can make good yields by investing in the northeast of England.
Yeah, and something about I know the new renters bill is getting a lot of press coverage at the moment. Something I often read is the removal of the no fault ground from the tenancy agreement. So at the moment, a landlord could give notice on a tenant for no reason at all and ask them to leave a property. Something similar happened in Scotland a few years ago, where that type of notice or reason for notice was removed from the landlord's power to end a tenancy in that form, and it when it was initially brought in, every thought this was going to have a detrimental effect on landlords, etc. And with I suppose with hindsight now, it hasn't really, and it's quite often, and as always been the case, it's usually the tenant that gives notice to the landlord as opposed to the landlord giving notice to the tenant. What do they feel about it in England, and what is their main concerns about it in England with that on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, there is some concern, but it's not really around Section 21 being removed, because Section 21 is, although it's a no fault eviction, there's always a reason for an eviction, because a landlord's business model is to keep the tenants in situ and paying rent, and as long as it's working for everyone, then that is the business model. I think the average tenancy is something like 4.5 years. So it's not a question of wanting to evict willy-nilly, but it is a question of that is the only viable solution for eviction at the moment, because the court system doesn't work. It's fundamentally broken. So our concern is court reform, is that we have got a mechanism to actually move tenants out of properties should the requirement be there, and a mechanism that works, because currently it doesn't, and that's been recognised by government also. So our biggest concern is court reform.
Mhm.
We've got about 7 minutes or something left, just to let you know the thing came up. And carrying on from what Ross said there, when the PRT came in, which was the lease that came in that got rid of the no fault notice, at the time, yeah, no reason notice. One of the biggest things is the removal of the fixed term. I think that has been quite impactful, certainly for student lets, HMOs particularly. Yeah. Would that be also a part of the rent reform bill as well?
Absolutely, and that is one of the major concerns about the rent reform bill. And it's the impact on the student market really is the major concern there, because without a set time frame for a tenant to leave, then how can a student landlord manage the business to know that there's going to be rooms available for the next intake of students? And this is a huge part of the campaigning that we've done as the NRLA. And we are being listened to. Feel in Westminster, it is being our voice is being heard, and we are hopeful that there will be some amendment to that, because the purpose-built student accommodation is exempt from that, so they can still have their fixed-term tenancies. So why a private landlord who provides exactly the same service cannot have the fixed-term tenancy? It seems a fundamental flaw. And we've got the backing of a lot of universities as well with this, because it is going to severely impact the supply of properties for students. So that's one of our major campaigns. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a big thing. That it's certainly in Scotland as well. The Scottish government used to sort of love purpose-built either student accommodation or just build to rent. And I think since they brought in the rent cap, there's been a lot less investment in that sector, because the institutions that are behind those various ventures are concerned about their ability to sort of their model to work in an environment where the rent is capped at 3% for ongoing tenancies on a regular basis. So obviously down south, the Green Party doesn't have a significant impact in government policy that they have in Scotland. So and many people believe it's the Green Party that's driving these things forward in Scotland as opposed to the SNP, but it's impacting everybody. So it's interesting how these things differ slightly from either side of the border, when they can be very close. Obviously, the border towns and villages are impacted the most, if that is, because you drive 10 minutes over the border, there's significant regulations on one side to the other side. What else are landlords saying to you when you go around and see them at the meetings? I mean, I'm maybe interested to know about the age and demographic, and maybe how that's changed over your time and your role when you go and speak to people, and whether you're seeing maybe a younger investor come in, or maybe you're not seeing as many young investors as you'd hope to see at these events.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I sort of classify, landlords into two sectors really. It's those who came in before 2008 in the credit crunch really, and those landlords have seen the goalposts change massively. They are in a different world now. So we've had Section 24, we've had obviously all the legislation changes, and now we're in a situation where those landlords a lot of them are looking at exiting the sector. I mean, at 5% base rate, the NRLA research is looking at sort of losing something in the region of 750,000 properties out of the PRS. So that's one camp of landlords, but then you've got the new breed, if you like, who are coming into a sector where they understand where the goalposts are. They know, obviously they're coming in within the envelope of a limited company, so they haven't got Section 24 to worry about. They know what's coming in potentially, or at least we know the way the wind is blowing with EPCs. So they're coming into a sector that they understand a lot more. Whereas for the older generation of landlord, it's all changed, and it just really can't be profitable in many cases. So yeah, the new breed are coming in with an idea of where the goalposts are, and I think that's a fundamental difference.
Yeah. Same up here, obviously. That's the kind of landlords that we're speaking to. Before we finish, John, do you have any portfolios for sale in England? I know the answer to this question.
Yes, we've got a number of portfolios for sale in England. Yes,
just run us through them if you can remember them briefly, just sort of the top line stuff, if you can remember.
Yeah, we've got portfolios. I suppose if you look at value, we've got a £3 million portfolio in Plymouth, up for sale, HMOs, good yield. We've got various portfolios in the northeast and in the northwest. So it's just a question of really getting in touch with your criteria, and we can see if we can match you with a landlord who is wishing to exit. Because what we can do there is maintain the tenancies, which is important. It's keeping houses in the sector. It's keeping the tenants in position, and it can be really seamless. So the exiting landlord can get rent up till the day of completion, and the new landlord can come in and get rent from day one. So it can work. Obviously, we've got to marry the expectations of both parties together, but that's our that's our role, and trying to find the right solution really for both the landlord wanting to sell and the investor coming in to buy. So yes, the message is just to get in touch with your requirements, and we can take it from there.
Sounds like a good selection. Seconds remaining. Ross, anything else?
No, I think we'll end it there and let you get back to your Miami Vice box set that you're currently watching and being influenced by your dressing.
There's a reason for this, but nobody's interested. I know. It's happened.
Yeah.
I mean, look at
Story
that.
there for the next.
Anyway,
Story there for the next one, Chris.
it's a fixture now. Cheers, guys.
Yeah.
Great to see you again, John. Take care.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Thanks a lot.